And value dogs, sorry, they're going to be last. I know people are into the value dogs, but because it's me, I got to get through all of my big spiels. So next up, gosh, I'm rattling things off. I've been talking for 20 minutes already. Next up, I have to get through this because I don't want to talk about it more than I have to. The Washington Huskies against the number 6 Penn State Nittany Lions was a smackdown. And it went, last week John had some positive things to say about how Penn State had played kind of a cake schedule. But it went exactly as I predicted. God, the voice crack. It went exactly as I predicted. Penn State was able to control this game. They scored 4 rushing touchdowns, with 3 of them with different players. They had Tyler Warren, Bo Pribula, whatever that guy's name is, and Katron Allen, all stepping in with touchdowns. They had 2 guys with 95 or more yards. And 1 guy with 45. Like, their rushing attack was just so potent. And Tyler Warren had a couple passes. I think he just, they were kind of doing whatever they wanted late in this game because he is, I believe, their tight end. And one of Tyler Warren's touchdowns was kind of an insane jumping over the entire Huskies line and reaching over with his arm. So, all in all, the Huskies just kind of got outplayed. Will Rogers goes 10 for 13 before basically getting subbed out, and the Huskies going to Damon Williams Jr. He goes 6 of 10 for 60 yards. Will Rogers had 10 completions for 59 yards. Will Rogers was so inefficient. It was a little scary. As a Huskies fan, you look at this game and you're like, man, do they have what it takes to beat UCLA next week to get a bowl game? Like, we don't even know if that's for certain. The other side of the football, offensively for the Huskies, Jonah Coleman, 11 carries for 24 yards, 2.2 average yards per carry. Damon Williams had 10 carries for 38 yards, and his long was 43 yards. That means in the other 9 carries, he was -5. This Penn State defense was for real when it comes to the Huskies, like halting the Huskies rushing game. Like, the Huskies couldn't go anywhere with the football. They had under 200 total yards, and Penn State had, if I did my math correctly, 486 yards. This was just kind of a slaughtering. The Huskies could not hold the ball, and that's just kind of all I have to say. Obviously, if you were watching that game, you saw the early targeting against, I think his name's Thaddeus Dixon. I want to say that's right. Thaddeus Dixon. He gets an early targeting call on what looked to be a pretty good form tackle. He just kind of led with the crown into the chin of the guy's helmet, which, it's a fair targeting call. It just didn't feel like what would have been what the targeting call is used for. It's not used to stop a form tackle. You wrap the guy up pretty cleanly, but that really threw off that was going to be a 3rd down stop, I believe, and it turned into a 15-yard gain for Penn State. They're able to score off that, and it really threw the tide of this game. So I think at the end of the day, you look at this game, you throw it out the window, you say, Huskies, you're not going to be the 8-4 team that we thought you were going to be at the beginning of this season. We talked about that early on. I don't see it anymore. I don't see this team, going 7-5. I don't see them being able to upset Oregon. Like, none of that is possible. What we want is for them to get a decent bowl game and for them to be prevalent when it comes to this Big 12. Currently, as it stands right now, has 4 of the top 5 teams, I believe, in Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana. All of these teams, I think 3 of them are in the college football playoff top 4, and then Indiana's sitting right on the outside waiting for Texas to lose one more time. It's just kind of a crazy year so far. The Big Ten is a monster conference, and I think we all thought it would be a little bit more of a cakewalk than it has been, and we could show like, hey, Pac-12 football is kind of where it's at. But maybe we need a little bit of a reset. John and I will talk about that later, I'm sure. But this Penn State game was one of those similar to the Iowa game where it was just like we were outmatched and outgunned in basically every facet of the defense and the rushing game, and Will Rogers has not proven himself yet. So we will see what this team does in the future. Looking at this UCLA game, I'm hit or miss for it. UCLA's quarterback is prone to throwing interceptions. They're 4-5. They started the season off horribly, so they've actually been on a decent turn. They won their last 3 games. One against Iowa. They won 20-17 on Saturday. And then they also beat Nebraska and Rutgers. 3 teams that UW had trouble with, and I'm not necessarily excited to play this team on the rise while they're also fighting for a bowl game. We will see. I would not necessarily take Washington minus 3.5 as the odds go right now. I think as a team, Washington may be able to run the ball. Maybe their quarterback is better. We will see. I haven't really followed the UCLA defense, but they held Iowa to 17 points. Like, this team has a decent run defense based on what we see from them just looking at the scores. So it's really tough to say, hey, this team can beat UCLA, get that bowl game. But for right now, you kind of have to trust it. UCLA's quarterback, like I said, interception prone. He's got under 2,000 yards so far in the season, only 12 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and their main running back has the most yards of a running back on the UCLA team is 350. Like, this team spreads the ball well in terms of they don't have one player that does, that rushes the football. Like, they don't have a Jonah Coleman. They don't have a Denzel Boston who's got 9 touchdowns and 700 yards. They've got guys in all areas of the field that can do good things. So we will see how UW performs. I think UW can win this game. I am not looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a relatively low scoring, almost Seahawks-like, 23-20 type game. And whichever one comes out on top will be ecstatic, because Washington will either have earned a bowl game, which is all they can hope for, considering their next game is against Oregon, I believe, which is a little scary. And then UCLA, if they win this game, they then have a chance to go for the bowl game. So all exciting things for both sides of this game. And man, it's tough to be a Huskies fan right now when you're looking at Wazoo sitting at 18 and 8-1. So with that being said, let's jump to Wazoo's game. Wazoo on Saturday, they beat the Utah State Aggies 49-28. That's exactly what we thought was going to happen. I can't sit here and say, oh, this was a tight game. The John Mateer accounted for 5 touchdowns. He threw for 4. He rushed for 1. Wayshawn Parker had 2 rushing touchdowns. This team had, in terms of total yards, they were actually pretty comparable, but Utah State had at least 2 turnovers. Yeah, they had a fumble loss and an interception. And so that's kind of the difference in the game. Wazoo is a team that is able to turn teams over, and they are efficient enough. John Mateer goes 18 of 24 for 179 yards, and they're able to run the football. They actually ran the football 45 times. Like, they were willing to just give the ball to Wayshawn Parker, to let John Mateer run. Schlenbacher had 10 carries. They were willing to let the clock run out, and they still scored 49 points. Like, this team is a potent offense. They scored 14 points in 3 quarters. Like, this team is very, very offensively gifted. And a lot of that lies on Mateer's shoulders and his ability to escape pressure in the pocket and make plays on the run. And so we will see. I really think Washington State has a chance here to both make the college football playoff if they can finish out this season strong. Like, I really do think that they have an outside chance. And maybe make a little bit of a splash. I don't think they're going to win in whatever game they play, and if they make the college football playoff, I don't want to hold out hope that they will win that game, but I think that they will have at least the capability to score. It might end up being like a 24-35 game, but it won't be a shutout. It won't be a absolute routing. I think that they would hold up better than Washington did against an Indiana team if Indiana's sitting at 5 and Washington State's at 12. So things of that nature are just fun things to look forward to when it comes to Washington State. In terms of this Utah State game, like we said, exactly what was expected. And when it comes to next week, they play New Mexico, the New Mexico Lobos. And you're looking at that and you're like, man, this game looks to be pretty easy. New Mexico played Utah State a few weeks back and they won 50-45. So they are offensively as potent as Washington State, but their defense is where they lack. So we will be looking for John Mateer to capitalize, and the New Mexico's quarterback again is a little bit prone to turnovers, and so he's got 11 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Like Washington State, as I just said, is capable of taking the ball away from opponents, and so we're going to use that to their advantage, hopefully, and they can take over this game, win another one, end up 9-1, and hopefully, I think they have one more game. I need to look at their schedule real quick. I think they have one more game, if not two. No, they don't. They have two more games. They've got New Mexico this upcoming weekend, and then they've got Oregon State the following weekend and Wyoming as their Thanksgiving weekend game. So good for them. They should beat Oregon State, they should beat New Mexico, and they should beat Wyoming and end the season 11-1 and be in the conversation for that college football playoff. Will they get in over a 2-loss SEC team? Who knows? But that is definitely something to consider.